What does it take to hold a nation together when enemies close in from every side? Can one man's vision preserve a legacy under siege? This is the story of King Yohannes IV, the Lion of Ethiopia, a ruler who stood at the crossroads of tradition and modernization. King Yohannes IV, born as Kasa Mercha, entered the world in 1837 in the small village of Mai Biha, near Debre Abe in Tigray, northern Ethiopia. His parents, Mercha Wolde Kidan, a notable of Tembien, and Silas Dimtsu, hailed from aristocratic lineages, giving Kasa a claim to nobility. Despite his noble background, Ethiopia during Kasa's youth was a fractured empire. Regional lords, or Aras, wielded significant power, and the central authority of the Solomonic dynasty was in decline. This period, known as the Era of the Princes, Zemene Mesafint, was marked by infighting among nobles, leaving the throne unstable. Kasa, Mercha's rise began as a local leader in Tigray. His early reputation as a charismatic and skilled military commander earned him loyalty among his followers. While Ethiopia was struggling to unify, Kasa emerged as a figure of hope. He was deeply influenced by the earlier reign of Emperor Tewodros II, who sought to modernize and centralize Ethiopia. Though Tewodros's rule ended in turmoil with his death in 1868, his vision for a unified Ethiopia inspired Kasa. Following the deaths of Tewodros II and Emperor Tekle Georgis II, Kasa positioned himself as a contender for the throne. However, this was not a straightforward path. The Ethiopian Empire was contested by powerful regional leaders, particularly Menelik II of Shewa and Tekle Haymanot of Gojam. Kasa's claim was bolstered by his strategic alliances and military victories. In 1871, he defeated his rival, Tekle Georgis II, at the Battle of Assam, solidifying his dominance over northern Ethiopia. Coronation as Emperor. In 1872, Kasa was crowned as Emperor Yohannes IV in Aksum, the ancient seat of Ethiopian kingship. His coronation ceremony was deeply symbolic, connecting Yohannes to the Solomonic dynasty, which traced its lineage to the biblical King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. By taking the name Yohannes, or John, he emphasized his role as a Christian emperor protecting the Orthodox faith. From the outset, Yohannes faced immense challenges. His ascension marked the start of a reign focused on unification, defense, and diplomacy. His early years as emperor were spent consolidating power, managing regional leaders, and confronting external threats. After his coronation in 1872, Emperor Yohannes IV immediately focused on securing his reign and consolidating Ethiopia's fragmented regions. His early military campaigns were decisive in asserting control over rebellious nobles and rivals, defeating Tekle Georgis II. Before becoming emperor, Kasa Mercha's victory over Tekle Georgis II at the Battle of Assam, 1871, marked a turning point. This battle not only eliminated a key rival, but also demonstrated Kasa's military acumen, solidifying his authority over Tigray and surrounding areas. Managing rivals in Shewa and Gojam, Yohannes IV's relationship with Menelik II of Shewa was one of cautious cooperation and underlying rivalry. Menelik, a cunning and ambitious leader, aimed to expand his influence over all of Ethiopia. After Yohannes's coronation in 1872, Menelik pledged loyalty to the emperor. However, this loyalty was largely strategic, as Menelik sought to avoid direct conflict with the more powerful Yohannes. To solidify their alliance, Yohannes arranged a marriage between his son, Ras Araya Selassie, and Menelik's daughter, Voizero Shorega. This move aimed to intertwine their dynasties and ensure mutual cooperation. Yohannes often accused Menelik of harboring ambitions to claim the throne. Menelik, in turn, resented Yohannes's centralized policies, which reduced Shewa's autonomy. Despite these tensions, both leaders recognized the importance of unity against external threats. Yohannes IV recognized that Ethiopia's internal divisions, rooted in regionalism, ethnic diversity, and religious differences, were a significant obstacle to national unity. His policies were aimed at centralizing authority and fostering a shared Ethiopian identity. One of Yohannes's most significant policies was enforcing Orthodox Christianity as the state religion. At the Council of Borumeda, Yohannes called together religious leaders from across Ethiopia to address theological disputes. He demanded that all Muslim and Catholic subjects convert to Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. While this policy strengthened national unity, it also alienated non-Orthodox communities, especially Muslims, who formed significant minorities in regions like Volo. Yohannes's policies in southern and eastern Ethiopia, particularly in regions inhabited by Oromo and Somali communities, were marked by both military campaigns and efforts to integrate these regions into the empire. However, his enforcement of Orthodox Christianity created resistance in these predominantly Muslim areas. Yohannes IV's early battles and policies set the stage for Ethiopia's survival during a tumultuous period in African history. His focus on religious and administrative unity provided a foundation for later emperors, particularly Menelik II, who continued Yohannes's mission of defending Ethiopia from colonization. Yohannes IV is best remembered for his staunch commitment to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. He viewed religious unity as essential to strengthening the empire and ensuring its survival against external threats and internal divisions. Yohannes summoned clergy and nobles from across Ethiopia to this historic council to establish Orthodox Christianity as the state religion and enforce doctrinal uniformity. Non-Orthodox Christians, particularly Catholics and Muslims, were pressured to convert. Muslim leaders in regions like Wollo were forced to publicly accept Christianity or face military action. This policy strengthened the central role of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, but also sowed resentment among non-Christian populations, particularly in Ethiopia's Muslim-majority areas. Yohannes granted land and privileges to monasteries, reinforcing their influence in education and administration. This helped spread Orthodox Christianity, but further entrenched the divide between the Christian highlands and other regions. Yohannes's deep devotion to the Orthodox Church earned him the title of a defender of Christianity, especially as he positioned Ethiopia as a bastion of faith against the rise of Islamic forces like the Mahdists in Sudan. Yohannes sought to standardize land distribution and taxation across the empire, reducing the power of regional lords. By redistributing land to loyal followers and clergy, he tied their allegiance directly to the crown. Yohannes IV's reign had a significant cultural impact, much of which revolved around preserving Ethiopia's heritage and traditions. The Ge'ez language, central to Ethiopian Orthodox liturgy, flourished under Yohannes's rule. He encouraged the study and preservation of religious texts written in Ge'ez. Yohannes IV supported the construction and restoration of churches and monasteries, particularly in Tigray. These structures became symbols of Ethiopian resilience and cultural identity. Religious festivals such as Timket, Epiphany, and Meskel, Finding of the True Cross, were elevated in significance during Yohannes's reign. He used these occasions to unify the empire and reinforce his authority. Yohannes IV was known for his discipline, piety, and strong moral code. His daily life was marked by prayer and religious observance. Yohannes believed his mission as emperor was divinely ordained, and this belief shaped his decisions. Unlike some of his predecessors, Yohannes led a relatively austere life. He avoided excessive displays of wealth and instead invested resources in strengthening the empire. Yohannes's leadership style was characterized by a combination of strict discipline and a sense of justice. He dealt firmly with disloyal nobles and rebellious regions, but often sought reconciliation after conflicts with Egypt and Sudan. Yohannes IV's strategic defense of Ethiopia. In the 1870s, Egypt, under Khedive Ismail Pasha, sought to expand its empire southward into East Africa. Ismail's ambitions were fueled by Egypt's growing military capabilities, financed through European investments, and its desire to control the sources of the Nile River. Khedive Ismail sought to expand its territory into Ethiopia aiming to control the Nile's headwaters and dominate the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia and Egypt had a history of tense relations due to religious differences, Catholic Christians versus Muslims, and competing territorial ambitions. Ethiopia, led by Yohannes IV, became a significant obstacle to these expansionist plans. The Battle of Gundet, 1875. Egypt, under Khedive Ismail, sought to expand its territory into Ethiopian highlands, targeting the strategic area of Tigray. Egyptian forces, heavily equipped with modern firearms and artillery, vastly outnumbered Ethiopian troops. The Egyptians launched an invasion of Ethiopia through the Marab River region in 1875. They aimed to capture key territories and extend their influence into the highlands. The Egyptian army, well equipped with modern firearms, artillery, and supported by European officers. Ethiopian forces, predominantly infantry armed with traditional weapons, supplemented by muskets acquired through limited trade. Ras Alula was one of the key Ethiopian commanders under Yohannes IV. He coordinated the Ethiopian forces, using guerrilla tactics to exploit the terrain of the Marab River Valley. Ethiopian forces ambushed the Egyptians at Gundet, decisively defeating them. The victory at Gundet shattered Egypt's ambitions and highlighted Ras Alula's ability to counter technologically superior enemies with superior strategy. The Ethiopian forces ambushed the Egyptians at Gundet, decimating their army. Over 3,000 Egyptian soldiers were killed, and their commander, Arakil Bey, was captured and executed. The victory at Gundet shattered the myth of Egyptian invincibility and showcased Ethiopia's military ingenuity. The Battle of Gura, 1876. After their defeat at Gundet, the Egyptians launched a second invasion under General Ratib Pasha, aiming for revenge and territorial conquest, determined to avenge their loss. This time, the Egyptian army, bolstered with more advanced weaponry and European military advisors, marched towards Gura in northern Ethiopia. Ras Alula played a critical role in orchestrating Ethiopian defenses. He devised a strategy to lure Egyptian forces into a narrow valley, where their numerical advantage and artillery were neutralized. Alula led several frontal assaults, inspiring Ethiopian troops to fight with extraordinary courage. Ethiopia achieved another decisive victory, forcing the Egyptians to retreat and abandon their plans of expansion into Ethiopia. Ras Alula's reputation as a brilliant tactician was firmly established. Gura, in the Eritrean highlands, near modern-day Asmara, Egyptian army, approximately 13,000 soldiers, heavily armed with modern rifles and cannons. Ethiopian army, estimated 50,000 troops, led personally by Yohannes IV, with Ras Alula commanding key detachments. The Egyptians fortified their position at Gura, expecting a direct assault. Yohannes employed a strategy of encirclement, cutting off Egyptian supply lines and launching repeated offensives. After a fierce battle, the Egyptian forces were overwhelmed and forced to retreat in disarray. Thousands of Egyptian soldiers were killed or captured. Ethiopia emerged victorious, solidifying its control over the northern highlands. The twin victories of Gundet and Gura ensured Ethiopia's sovereignty and deterred further Egyptian invasions during Yohannes's reign. Conflict with Sudan, the Mahdist Wars. In 1881, Muhammad Ahmad, proclaiming himself the Mahdi, Islamic messianic figure, established a theocratic state in Sudan. The Mahdist forces threatened Ethiopia's western borders. Yohannes waged several campaigns against the Mahdist forces, aiming to protect Ethiopia's sovereignty and its Christian identity. The Battle of Kufit, 1885, marked a significant Ethiopian victory, with Ras Alula defeating the Mahdists. Diplomatic maneuvering Yohannes IV reign was marked by careful diplomacy with European powers, including Britain and Italy. And Britain's interest in Ethiopia was largely tied to its imperial strategy in the Red Sea region and its rivalry with Egypt and later Italy. Yohannes IV engaged with Britain cautiously, understanding its potential as an ally against common adversaries. Britain's strategic rivalry with Egypt over control of the Suez Canal made them wary of Egyptian expansion into Ethiopia. During the Egyptian invasions of Ethiopia in 1875 and 1876, Britain indirectly supported Yohannes by refusing to fully back Egypt's territorial ambitions. Yohannes capitalized on this rivalry, strengthening his position as a regional power. The Hewitt Treaty, 1884. One of Yohannes's most significant diplomatic achievements with Britain was the Hewitt Treaty, signed in 1884. Britain, seeking Ethiopian support against the modest uprising in Sudan, agreed to recognize Ethiopian sovereignty and promised to return Ethiopian territories occupied by Egypt. Yohannes committed to assisting Britain in evacuating Egyptian garrisons stranded in Sudan. While Yohannes honored his part of the agreement, Britain failed to ensure the promised return of territories like Massawa, which was instead handed over to Italy. This betrayal fueled Ethiopian distrust of European powers. Despite Yohannes's efforts to align with Britain, their relationship was pragmatic and transactional. Britain's reluctance to provide Ethiopia with modern weapons or military support limited the alliance's effectiveness. Italy emerged as a significant colonial power during Yohannes IV's reign, with ambitions to establish control over Eritrea and expand into the Ethiopian highlands. Yohannes's relationship with Italy was marked by suspicion and resistance. Italian occupation of Massawa, 1885. After Italy occupied the Red Sea port of Massawa in 1885, they sought to expand into Eritrea, claiming Ethiopian territory. Italian forces underestimated Ethiopian resistance and marched inland with a small detachment of 500 soldiers. As governor of Tigray, Ras Alula took immediate action to confront the Italian incursion. Using his intimate knowledge of the terrain, he set up an ambush near Dogali. Ethiopian forces, numbering around 5,000, overwhelmed the Italian troops, annihilating nearly the entire detachment. The victory at Dogali humiliated Italy and delayed its expansion into Eritrea. Ras Alula's triumph demonstrated that Ethiopia would not bow to colonial powers without a fight. After Britain facilitated Italy's takeover of Massawa, Yohannes viewed Italy as a direct threat to Ethiopia's sovereignty. The port of Massawa, vital for Ethiopia's access to international trade, was a critic loss. Yohannes condemned Britain's role in enabling Italian expansion, further straining their relationship. Italy initially attempted to secure Yohannes's cooperation by offering vague promises of friendship and trade. Yohannes refused to recognize Italy's claims over Eritrea, emphasizing Ethiopia's historic and territorial rights. The Battle of Dogali, 1887. Yohannes's general, Ras Alula Ngida, led Ethiopian forces to a decisive victory against Italy at the Battle of Dogali. This confrontation was a significant setback for Italy and demonstrated Ethiopia's determination to resist colonial encroachment. While Yohannes IV resisted formal agreements with Italy, his successor, Menelik II, signed the Treaty of Vuchala in 1889, the Battle of Metemma, 1889. The Mahdists launched a major offensive against Ethiopia, leading Yohannes IV to march north to confront them. This battle would ultimately claim the life of Yohannes IV, marking a turning point in Ethiopian history. The Mahdists mounted a major invasion of Ethiopia, prompting Yohannes to lead a large army to confront them at Metemma, near the modern Sudanese border. Ethiopian army, approximately 80,000 troops, personally led by Yohannes' Mahdist army. A similarly large force, driven by religious fervor and bolstered by their recent conquests. Yohannes and his army initially gained the upper hand, inflicting heavy casualties on the Mahdists. During the battle, Yohannes was mortally wounded by a bullet to the chest. Despite his injury, he urged his forces to continue fighting. Ras Alula commanded a significant portion of the Ethiopian army during the battle. Despite fierce resistance, the Ethiopian forces suffered heavy losses. The death of Yohannes IV weakened Ethiopian unity, leading to a power struggle that Alula had to navigate under Menelik II's leadership. Ras Alula is often referred to as the Napoleon of Ethiopia, for his tactical genius and relentless dedication to defending his country. His victories at Gundet, Gura, and Dogali remain some of the most celebrated moments in Ethiopian military history. Even after Yohannes IV's death, Alula continued to defend Ethiopia's sovereignty. Though his influence waned under Menelik II, the Ethiopians retreated following Yohannes's death, and the Mahdists claimed victory, though their advances into Ethiopia were ultimately short-lived. Yohannes's death at Metemma marked the end of his reign and a turning point in Ethiopia's history. The loss of his leadership left Ethiopia vulnerable to internal power struggles and external threats. Yohannes IV's victories at Gundet and Gura safeguarded Ethiopia's independence and demonstrated its ability to repel modern, well-equipped armies. These battles secured Ethiopia's territorial integrity and deterred Egyptian aggression. Yohannes successfully defended Ethiopia's western borders for much of his reign, ensuring that the Mahdists were unable to gain a foothold in Ethiopian territory. His death in battle became a symbol of his dedication to Ethiopia's sovereignty and unity. After Yohannes's death, Menelik II eventually united Ethiopia, but Yohannes's legacy laid the groundwork for resisting colonization. Yohannes IV is remembered as a defender of Ethiopia's sovereignty and the Orthodox faith. His victories against Egypt and Sudan preserved Ethiopia's independence during a time of increasing European colonization in Africa. His death marked the end of an era, but paved the way for Menelik II's unification efforts. The story of Yohannes IV does not end with his death. His legacy paved the way for Ethiopia's continued resistance against colonization. In our next video, we'll uncover the rise of Menelik II, his legendary victory at the Battle of Adwa, and how Ethiopia defied European colonizers to remain the only African nation never colonized. So, don't miss it. And make sure to subscribe and like the video.
Secrets concealed in golden dawns, our fate is revealed. The drum beats echo from days of old, songs of warriors brave and bold. Ethiopia's heart beats strong and true. Our roots run deep skies, brilliant blue. From lush green fields to deserts dry, we rise together, spirits fly. In bustling markets, vibrant and loud, the essence of life in colors and shroud. Spices in the air, tales in the wind. A culture so rich, our souls twine. Unity and diversity is our creed. A tapestry of traditions the world